Before your daughter gets back, look at what's behind the painting in the living room." My sister Beth's voice was trembling so much I almost didn't recognize it. It was 8 at night, and Sarah had gone out with her friends to finalize the details for her graduation party. "What are you talking about, Beth? I just cleaned there this morning." My heart started to beat faster. I recognized that broken tone in my sister's voice. It was the same one from when we were kids, and she had discovered something terrible. "Helen, please just listen to me. What she's hiding there is much dirtier than dust. The truth is right there, taped behind the frame." Her words broke into a sob that chilled my blood. With trembling hands, I walked to the living room. That painting had been there for 15 years, ever since Emily and David moved in with me after they lost their apartment. It was a simple painting of red flowers that my daughter had chosen to brighten up the room. I never liked it, but I never said anything. Like so many other things in recent years, I had learned to stay quiet. I lifted the painting carefully. It was heavier than I remembered. My arthritic fingers protested, but something in Beth's voice gave me strength. As I turned the frame over, I saw a manila envelope taped to the back. My name was written on it in Emily's handwriting. "Mom, urgent. Open only in case of emergency." My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. Inside there were documents, letters, forms. The first sheet took my breath away. It was an application for admission to the St. Raphael home, a residence for the elderly. My name was listed as the patient. The admission date was set for 2 days after Sarah's graduation. The signature was Emily's as my legal representative. "Oh my God," I whispered, feeling my legs go weak. I kept reading. There were letters addressed to my pension administration requesting a change of direct beneficiary. David was listed as the primary caregiver authorized to manage Mrs. Helen's resources due to progressive mental incapacity. Mental incapacity. Those words danced in front of my eyes like daggers. The third letter was the most painful. A fake psychological evaluation signed by a doctor I had never seen in my life. The patient shows clear signs of senile dementia and erratic behavior. Immediate commitment is recommended for her safety and the safety of her family. Lies. It was all lies written in cold, calculating script. My memories took me back to that spring afternoon 20 years ago, when Emily came home crying because she had lost her job. I hugged her in this very living room, stroked her hair like when she was little. "Don't worry, my love. Mom will always be here for you." I gave her my savings so she could study nursing. I sold my mother's jewelry to pay for her books. When she met David, I invited them to live with me because they had nowhere to go. "Your mom is an angel," David used to tell me in those first few years, kissing my forehead after dinner. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you do for us." Emily would smile from the kitchen, her hands full of soap, washing the dishes I had cooked for them. "Mom, you're the best grandma Sarah could ever have," she would tell me while I watched the baby so she could rest. When did it all change? When did my affection become annoying? When did my conversations become interruptions? When did my presence in my own home start to become a burden? The last document broke my soul. It was a letter from Emily to David dated 3 months ago. "I already spoke with the lawyer. Once she's committed, we can sell the house. With the $1,200 from her monthly pension, plus what we get from the sale, we can buy something better on the north side. Sarah doesn't have to know anything until she finishes college." The phone rang. It was Beth again. "Did you see it?" Her voice was broken. "Helen, I didn't know how to tell you. Sarah called me a week ago crying. She found the papers in her parents' room and brought them to me. I couldn't believe my own niece." Her voice broke. "How could they plan this all behind your back?" I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. My heartbeat echoed in my ears like war drums. 25 years working as a secretary at City Hall. 25 years saving every penny to buy this house. 45 years raising Emily alone after her father abandoned us. And this is how she repaid me. I heard the key in the door. Emily was home early. Quickly, I put the documents back in the envelope and hid it under my blouse. I rehung the painting, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "Hi, Mom," she said without looking at me, heading straight for the kitchen. "Did you eat dinner already?" "Yes, my love," I answered in a normal voice, though I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. I watched her walk to the refrigerator, open the doors, check what there was to eat. The same woman who had grown up in my arms, who had cried on my shoulder during her first heartbreak, who had called me my hero the day she graduated from nursing school. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day," she said, pouring herself a glass of milk. "Sarah's graduation is at 10. Then we have the family lunch." She smiled at me, a smile that now seemed as fake as everything else. "I hope you're feeling well, Mom. We don't want you to get too tired." "We don't want you to get too tired." Her words echoed in my head with a sinister tone. Of course they didn't want me to get tired. They needed me to be presentable for Sarah's graduation. After that, it wouldn't matter anymore. "Rest well, Mom," Emily said before going up to her room. Her footsteps on the stairs sounded like hammers pounding on my soul. I was left alone in the living room, the envelope burning against my chest like hot coal. Outside, the rain began to hit the window panes, as if the sky was crying with me. I slowly climbed the stairs to my room. Each step felt as heavy as a mountain. Once inside, I took out the documents and spread them on my bed. I read them over and over, looking for some mistake, some explanation, other than the cruelest betrayal I had experienced in my 68 years. But there was no mistake. Everything was perfectly planned, calculated, executed with the coldness of a perfect crime. My mind traveled to that Sunday afternoon 3 months ago when David suggested, for my own good, that I stop cooking. "Helen, you look very tired lately. Let us take care of the kitchen." I thought it was consideration. Now I understood it was the first step to prove my incapacity. The following week, Emily told me I had forgotten to take my blood pressure pills. It was a lie, but she wrote it down in a notebook. Mom forgets her medication. Worrisome? I remembered when they started talking in low voices, falling silent whenever I entered the room. "We're just discussing Sarah's graduation gift," they would say with rehearsed smiles. A lie. They were discussing my future, my destiny, my living death. They were treating me as if I were already dead, as if my opinion was worthless. My phone vibrated. A text from Sarah. "Grandma, I can't sleep. I'm so nervous about tomorrow. Are you awake too?" My granddaughter. My light in all this darkness. She didn't know anything, or maybe she did, and that's why she took the documents to Beth. My heart broke thinking about the pain she must be feeling. I replied, "I'm awake too, my love. The nerves are normal. Tomorrow will be your most beautiful day." I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't destroy her graduation with this nightmare. But I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know either. I got up and walked to the window. The rain had intensified. The drops slid down the glass like the tears I couldn't shed. I had to be strong. I had to think clearly. Tomorrow after the graduation, they were going to execute their plan. 2 days later, I would be locked up in the St. Raphael home, turned into just another number, while they enjoyed my house and my money. "No," I whispered in the dark. "I will not allow it." I looked in my closet for the shoebox where I kept my personal documents. Inside was my will, written 5 years ago. Everything was left to Emily and Sarah. I also found the house deeds, my ID, my savings passbook. I had $3,000 saved that they didn't know existed. Money I had been secretly saving for the day I wanted to take a special trip with Sarah. Now that money would have another purpose. I took out a sheet of paper and started writing a letter. My hands trembled at first, but then they became firmer, more determined. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, it's because things have turned out as I expected. I want you to know that everything I am about to do is for love. For love of you, for love of myself, and yes, even for love of your mother, though she may not understand it now." I stopped writing. Love. How could I talk about love when they had betrayed me in the vilest way? I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. This wasn't the time for sentimentality. It was time for survival. I went back to the fake documents. I studied every line, every signature, every date. The doctor who had signed the psychological evaluation was named Robert Matthews. I had never heard that name. Surely David had contacted him through an acquaintance at the hospital where he worked as a nurse. An unscrupulous doctor who would sign any paper for money. The St. Raphael home. I looked up the phone number online. It was a terrible place according to the reviews. Abandoned seniors' mistreatment, horrible food, adulterated medication. A place where people went to die, slowly forgotten by the world. A place where my voice would never be heard, where my complaints would be interpreted as dementia, and where my money would be used to pay for my own torture. My memories took me to that Christmas 2 years ago, the last time I was truly happy in this house. Sarah had arrived with a beautiful green dress she had bought with her first paycheck from her part-time job. "Grandma, this dress is for you. I want you to wear it on Christmas Eve," Emily had protested. "Mom doesn't need new dresses. It's an unnecessary expense." But I wore it that night, and I felt beautiful, alive, important. Now I understood why Emily didn't want me to have new dresses. A woman who takes care of herself, who feels pretty, is a woman who has hope. And a woman with hope is dangerous to the plans of those who want to bury her alive. I put all the documents in a new envelope and hid them inside my Bible. Tomorrow, after the graduation, I was going to need proof. I also took my phone and photographed every single page. If something happened, Beth would have the evidence. It was 2 a.m. when I finally lay down, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, planning, calculating, preparing for the most important battle of my life. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Fear had transformed into determination, sadness into anger, resignation into rebellion. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily was going to the bathroom. Her footsteps sounded different tonight. They were no longer the steps of my beloved daughter. They were the steps of a stranger who had planned my destruction while I slept trusting under the same roof. When she returned to her room, I heard whispers. She was talking to David, probably discussing the final details of their perfect plan. They felt so safe, so smart. Tomorrow they would discover they had underestimated the woman who gave them everything. I sat up in bed and looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of moon was peering through the clouds. It was like a sign, a light in the midst of the darkness my life had become. "Tomorrow everything changes," I muttered silently. And for the first time in a long time, a smile formed on my lips. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of determination, the smile of a woman who had hit rock bottom and was ready to rise. I woke up before dawn with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. My body moved with purpose as I showered and dressed for the most important day of Sarah's life, and perhaps the last day of my life as I knew it. I chose my yellow dress, the one that made me feel elegant and powerful. If these were to be my last hours of freedom, I would live them with dignity. I went down to the kitchen early and prepared Sarah's favorite breakfast pancakes with syrup and fresh fruit. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture charged with true love. Not the desperate, pleading love I had been giving lately, but the firm, powerful love of a grandmother protecting her granddaughter to the end. "Good morning, Mom." Emily appeared in the kitchen looking nervous. She had put on an elegant black dress as if she were going to a funeral. How appropriate, I thought. In a way, she was. "Why are you up so early?" "It's my granddaughter's graduation day," I replied with a genuine smile. I wanted everything to be perfect for her. Emily looked at me strangely. She hadn't heard me speak with so much energy, with so much life in my voice in months. Her eyes scanned me as if looking for signs of something suspicious. "Mom, after the ceremony we're going to lunch at Aunt Linda's house," she said, pouring herself coffee. "I hope you feel up to it. It's been a very intense period for the whole family." Intense! What an interesting word to describe the months she had been planning my disappearance. "I feel wonderful, my love. Very lucid." I emphasized the word lucid and watched her tense up almost imperceptibly. In fact, I feel clearer than ever. David came down shortly after wearing his best gray suit. He greeted me with that fake smile I could now see right through. "Helen, you look beautiful today. That dress is lovely on you." His words sounded hollow, but I responded sweetly. "Thank you, David. You look very elegant, too. Sarah is going to be so proud to have such a united family." The word united hung in the air like a bitter irony that only I could fully savor. Sarah appeared radiant in her cream-colored graduation dress and a smile that lit up the whole house. "Grandma, those pancakes smell delicious." She came over and hugged me tightly. In that hug, I felt all her love, but also a deep sadness she was trying to hide. She knew something. My poor granddaughter was carrying the weight of a secret she shouldn't have to know at 18. "My beautiful princess," I whispered in her ear. "Today is your day. Enjoy it without worrying about anything else." I felt her relax in my arms. For a moment, we were just a grandmother and her granddaughter celebrating an important achievement as it should be. During breakfast, I watched my family with new eyes. Emily constantly checked her phone. David kept up superficial conversations about the weather and the day's plans, but their eyes met constantly in a silent language of complicity. Sarah, on the other hand, tried to stay cheerful, but sadness peeked out of her eyes every time she looked at me. "Grandma, are you going to be in all the pictures after the ceremony?" Sarah asked as she finished her pancakes. "Of course, my love. I wouldn't miss a second of your special day." I looked directly at Emily and added, "In fact, I want us to take lots of pictures together. Memories are the most important thing we have." Emily choked slightly on her coffee. "Yes, Mom, lots of pictures." Her voice sounded forced. After breakfast, while everyone was getting ready, I took the opportunity to call Beth from the kitchen phone. "How did you wake up, sister?" "Worried about you, Helen? Are you sure you can handle this alone?" "I have to, Beth. But I need you to know something. If you can't reach me for a few days after today, don't worry. I have a plan." I explained in whispers about the documents I had photographed and gave her the login information for my email account where I had saved all the evidence. "Helen, don't do anything dangerous. We can report this to the authorities." "And who's going to believe us? Emily is a nurse. David works at the hospital. They have a doctor who signed a fake evaluation. I'm just a 68-year-old woman whose word is worth less than the paper they wrote their lies on." My voice broke slightly. "But don't worry, I won't do anything to put Sarah in danger." I hung up just as Emily was coming down the stairs. "Who were you talking to, Mom?" "With Beth. I was telling her about the graduation." Technically, it wasn't a lie. The drive to the university was tense but full of anticipation. Sarah was radiant in the front seat, talking about her future plans, the university, where she would study medicine, all her dreams. I listened from the back seat, recording every word in my memory like a priceless treasure. "Grandma, when I'm a doctor, I'm going to take good care of you," she said, turning to me with that smile that was my reason for living. "My love, you already take care of me more than you know," I replied, and I saw in the rearview mirror how Emily gripped the steering wheel tighter. The graduation ceremony was beautiful. Seeing Sarah walk across that stage, receive her diploma, smile with pride, it filled me with a deep, genuine happiness. For a moment, I forgot everything else. I was just a proud grandmother, celebrating her granddaughter's triumph. After the ceremony, during the family photos, I noticed something strange. Emily and David made sure I appeared in very few pictures. "Mom, why don't you sit here in the shade? The sun is very strong," they would say. "Oh, Helen, why don't you go get some water? We'll continue with the photos." It was as if they were already erasing me from the family history, as if they wanted little evidence of my presence on this important day. My heart hardened a little more with each subtle exclusion, but Sarah noticed. "No, I want all the pictures with my grandma. She's the reason I made it this far." She took my hand and pulled me to the center of the family group. "Grandma, without your stories, without your support, without all the nights you helped me with homework when Mom was working, I wouldn't be here." Her words were like daggers to Emily, but for me, they were like balm. My granddaughter valued me, loved me, recognized me. That gave me strength for what was to come. During lunch at Linda's house, Emily's sister, I watched how everyone interacted with me. Linda treated me with that typical condescension towards the elderly, speaking to me slowly and loudly, as if I were deaf or stupid. Sarah's cousins barely spoke to me. It was as if I were already a ghost in my own family. But there was a revealing moment. When Sarah was in the bathroom, I heard Linda whisper to Emily, "Is everything ready for Monday?" "Yes, all confirmed. 9 in the morning," Emily replied in a low voice. "Poor thing. I hope it's for the best." "It's for the best for everyone, Linda. She can't live alone anymore, and we can't take care of her 24 hours a day." Lies. I didn't need 24-hour care. I could cook clean, bathe, dress myself, manage my medications, do my shopping. I was completely independent. But they had built a narrative where I was a burden, a problem that had to be solved. That afternoon back at home, Sarah stayed with me in the living room while her parents went up to rest. "Grandma, can I ask you something? Anything you want, my love. Are you happy living with us?" The question broke my heart because I saw in her eyes that she already knew the answer. Sarah, happiness doesn't depend on the place you live, but on the people who truly love you. "But do you feel loved here?" I took her hands in mine. They were soft, young, full of future. "My love, I feel loved by you, and that is enough to keep my heart beating." Sarah burst into tears. "Grandma, I don't want you to leave." "Leave? Who said anything about leaving? And I heard things. I saw papers." Her voice broke completely. I held her tightly. "My princess, sometimes adults make decisions they think are right, but they hurt a lot. But I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter where I am, you will always be the light of my life. Promise me we'll always keep seeing each other. I promise you that as long as I live, I will find a way to be near you." That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on my bed with the fake documents spread out in front of me. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, 2 men from the St. Raphael home would come to get me. Emily would tell them I had an episode during the night, that I had been confused and aggressive. David would confirm the story. The fake doctor had already sent his report. Everything was perfectly orchestrated. But they didn't know that I knew the plan. And that advantage was going to change everything. I woke up at 5 in the morning with a determination that ran through my veins like liquid fire. Today was the day Emily and David believed would be the end of my story, but it was going to be the beginning of my rebirth. I dressed carefully, choosing my most elegant outfit, a wine-colored suit I had bought for my niece's wedding 2 years ago. If they were going to try to strip me of my dignity, I would at least look impeccable while fighting for it. I went down to the kitchen in silence and made coffee. I needed every fiber of my being to be alert for what was coming. As the aroma filled the kitchen, I took out my phone and sent a message to Beth. "Today is the day. Remember everything we talked about. I love you, sister." At 6:30, I heard movement upstairs. Emily and David were getting up earlier than usual. Of course, they had to prepare to perform their perfect theater. I heard their voices whispering, but I couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. I already knew exactly what they were planning. Emily came down first, looking nervous but trying to seem normal. "Good morning, Mom. You're up early again." "I couldn't sleep well," I said, which was completely true. "I was thinking a lot." Her eyes sharpened. "Thinking about what?" "About Sarah, about how proud I am of her, about everything we've experienced together in this house." I paused and looked directly at her. "About how quickly a person's life can change." Emily poured her coffee with slightly shaky hands. "Mom, sometimes changes are necessary. Sometimes things just can't stay the same." "You're right, my love. Sometimes things just can't stay the same." I repeated her exact words and watched a shiver run down her spine. David appeared shortly after, already dressed and combed as if he had an important appointment. "Good morning, Helen. How did you wake up?" Very lucid David, incredibly lucid. I emphasized the word I knew terrified them. A lucid woman was dangerous to their plans. "Mom," Emily cleared her throat. "Today some people are coming to visit you. They're doctors. They're going to ask you a few questions. Nothing to worry about." "Doctors? What do I need doctors for? I feel perfectly fine." "It's just a routine checkup." David intervened quickly. "You know, at our age, it's important to stay on top of our health." "At our age," I repeated slowly. "David, you are 42. I am 68. We are not at the same age." An uncomfortable silence filled the kitchen. Emily and David exchanged panicked glances. My response had been too sharp, too precise for someone supposedly suffering from dementia. "Of course, Helen. I misspoke," David stammered. "Don't worry. We all misspeak sometimes. Even doctors misspeak sometimes. Don't you think?" My smile was sweet, but my words were sharp. Sarah came down shortly after, still in her pajamas, her hair messy. "Good morning, family." "Why is everyone up so early?" She came over and gave me a kiss on the cheek. "Did you sleep well, Grandma?" "Like an angel, my love. I dreamed about you." "Really? What did you dream?" "I dreamed that you were very brave and that you always defended what was right, no matter how hard it was." Sarah looked at me with those deep eyes she had inherited from me. "Dreams are sometimes premonitions, aren't they, Grandma?" "Sometimes they are, my princess. Sometimes they are." Emily stood up abruptly. "Sarah, why don't you go upstairs and get dressed? Your father and I need to talk to Grandma about the doctors who are coming." "What doctors?" Sarah frowned. "It's nothing important," David said quickly. "Just a checkup." But Sarah didn't move. She stood next to me like a soldier guarding her general. "Is Grandma sick?" "No, my love, Grandma is perfectly fine," I assured them, keeping my voice firm. I have never been clearer in my entire life. At 8:30, Emily asked me to go to the living room. "The doctors will be here soon. Mom, why don't you sit comfortably while we wait?" I walked to the living room, but before sitting down, I did something that surprised them. I walked over to the painting of red flowers, the same one where I had found the documents, and straightened it slightly. "This painting always hangs a little crooked, don't you think?" I watched Emily turn completely pale. David coughed nervously. They knew that I knew, but they didn't know how much I knew. "Mom, come sit here." Emily guided me to the sofa with a false gentleness that made me sick. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart sped up, but my mind grew calm. It was the moment of truth. I heard male voices at the entrance, low conversations, approaching footsteps. 2 men entered the living room wearing white uniforms. They weren't doctors. They were orderlies from the St. Raphael home. One was burly and bald, the other thin with glasses. Both had that professional but cold expression of those used to dealing with rebellious seniors. "Good morning, Mrs. Helen," said the burly one. "I'm Carlos, and this is Michael. We've come to escort you to your new home." My new home? I feigned total confusion. "But I already have a home. This is my home." "Mom," Emily approached with fake tears in her eyes. "Remember we talked about this? You're going to a very nice place where they will take better care of you." "I don't remember talking about that, Emily. My memory is perfect." My voice grew stronger. "And I don't need to be taken care of. I can take care of myself." The orderly Carlos took some papers from his briefcase. "Ma'am, we have a medical order here. Your family is concerned for your safety." "What medical order, signed by whom?" I stood up from the sofa with dignity. "I haven't seen any doctor recently." Michael, the thin orderly, took a step closer. "Ma'am, we know this can be confusing for you, but it's for your own good." "Confusing for me," my voice rose. "The only thing confusing here is how 2 strangers can enter my house with papers I never signed, talking about taking me to a place I never chose." At that moment, Sarah appeared in the living room. She had been listening from the stairs. "What is going on here? Who are these men?" "Sarah, go back to your room," Emily ordered in a tense voice. "No." Sarah planted herself firmly next to me. "Where are you trying to take my grandma?" Carlos consulted his papers. "Young lady, your grandmother is going to a specialized home where she will receive the care she needs." "But my grandmother doesn't need specialized care. She's perfectly fine." Sarah took my arm. "Grandma, do you want to go?" I looked at my granddaughter, then at the orderlies, then at Emily and David, who were standing near the door as if to block any escape. It was time to play my first card. "No, my love. I don't want to go anywhere. This is my house, the one I bought with my own work, where I raised your mother, where I've watched you grow up." I turned directly to Carlos. "And I want to see that medical order you claim to have." Carlos handed me the papers with some reluctance. I took them and examined them as if it were the first time I'd seen them. "This Dr. Robert Matthews, when did he examine me?" "According to our records 2 weeks ago," Michael answered. "How strange," I said aloud. "Because I don't remember seeing any doctor 2 weeks ago. In fact, I haven't seen any doctor in the last 6 months except for Dr. Ramirez for my annual blood pressure checkup." A tense silence filled the room. Emily started to pace nervously. "Mom, You forget things sometimes. I forget things. I turned to her with a force that made her step back. Emily, tell me exactly what day I went to see Dr. Matthews. Who took me? What hospital was it? How long did the consultation last? Emily opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. She had no answers because no such consultation had ever existed. I don't remember exactly, but you do remember that I forget things, right? My voice became as sharp as a knife. Doesn't it seem strange that I would forget an important medical consultation, but you remember perfectly that I forgot it? Sarah looked at me with admiration. I could see in her eyes that she was understanding that her grandmother was not the confused old woman her parents had been describing. Carlos cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ma'am, we understand your confusion, but we have specific orders. Orders from whom? I interrupted. From the ghost doctor who never examined me, or from my daughter who wants to get rid of me to keep my house and my pension. The silence that followed was deafening. I had put all the cards on the table. There was no turning back. The words I had just spoken hung in the air like time bombs. Emily turned white as a sheet. David began to stammer, and the two orderlies looked at each other with obvious discomfort. But it was Sarah's expression that hit me the most. Her eyes filled with a painful understanding and a rage I had never seen in her. Take your house and your pension. Sarah repeated my words slowly, looking at her parents in disbelief. What is Grandma talking about? Sarah, your grandmother is confused. Emily tried to explain, her voice trembling. She doesn't know what she's saying. I am not confused. My voice resonated with a strength that surprised even me. I am clearer than I have ever been in my life, and it's time you all knew that I know every detail of your plan. I walked over to the painting of red flowers. Without taking my eyes off Emily, I lifted it off the wall. The sound of the frame hitting the floor made everyone jump. With deliberate movements, I tore off the remaining adhesive tape from the back and held it up as evidence. This is where you kept the fake documents, the commitment application that you signed behind my back, Emily, the papers to transfer my pension to David, the psychological evaluation from Dr. Robert Matthews, a man who never existed in my life. Carlos and Michael instinctively took a step back. This was not what they expected to find. A supposedly demented old woman who knew specific details of legal documents did not fit the profile they had been given. Ma'am. Carlos cleared his throat nervously. We just follow orders. If there's a problem with the documentation... Of course there are problems with the documentation. I turned to him with royal dignity. Because all of this documentation is based on lies. I have never shown signs of dementia. I have never been evaluated by the doctor who signed these papers. And I have never ever given my consent to be committed anywhere. Sarah moved closer to me and took my hand. Her voice trembled with emotion. Grandma, is it true they really planned all this? My love, 3 days ago I found all the documents hidden behind that painting. Signed applications, scheduled dates, even letters talking about selling this house once I was locked away. Every word was a dagger aimed at Emily's heart. That's not true, Emily finally exploded. Mom, you have been very confused lately. You forget to take your medication. Sometimes you don't recognize people. I don't recognize people. I laughed bitterly. Emily, I perfectly recognize the daughter I raised, who I educated, to whom I gave all my love and money so she could study. And I also perfectly recognize the woman she became, a stranger who plans to commit her own mother to steal everything she has. We're not stealing anything, David shouted, finally losing his composure. We're doing this for your own good. For my good. My voice became dangerously low. David, tell me exactly how locking me up in the St. Raphael home is for my good. Explain to me how taking away my house, my freedom, and my dignity could possibly be good for me. Because you can't take care of yourself anymore, Emily mumbled, but her voice had lost all conviction. I can't take care of myself. I stood up to my full height. Yesterday I made breakfast for the entire family. This morning I got up, bathed, dressed myself, made coffee, and held a completely coherent conversation with you, with David, and with these gentlemen. What part of that indicates I can't take care of myself? Michael. The thin orderly took out his phone. I think we need to make a call. This situation is not clear. Excellent idea, I exclaimed. Call your supervisor. Tell them you came to pick up a supposedly demented old woman, but you found a completely lucid woman who knows all the details of a family conspiracy to steal her assets. Carlos began to put the papers back in his briefcase. Ma'am, we cannot proceed if there are family disputes about the documentation. There is no dispute, Sarah said in a voice I had never heard, cold and adult. There is an attempted fraud, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows about it. She turned directly to her parents. Did you really think you could do this? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I was going to let you lock up my grandmother in an asylum while you took all her money? Sarah, you don't understand, Emily began. I understand perfectly. Sarah's voice broke with emotion. I understand that you have been planning to get rid of the woman who gave you everything. I understand that you have been lying for months. I understand that you were going to wait until after my graduation so you wouldn't ruin my special day, all while you were destroying the life of the person I love most in this world. Tears were streaming down my granddaughter's cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of righteous anger, of moral indignation, of protective love. And I understand something else. Sarah continued staring hard at her parents. I understand that I can no longer live under the same roof as you. Sarah, don't be ridiculous, David muttered. Ridiculous! Sarah laughed humorlessly. The only ridiculous thing here was thinking I was going to stay silent while you betrayed my grandmother. The orderlies were already backing toward the door. This situation had escalated far beyond their job responsibilities. Mrs. Helen, Carlos said, we are going to report this situation to our supervisors. Obviously, there are problems with the documentation that need to be resolved before proceeding. Thank you, I replied with dignity. And please make sure you also report that you arrived at a home where you found a family involved in what appears to be documentary fraud and attempted forced commitment. Once the orderlies left, a heavy silence filled the room. Emily and David looked like two criminals caught red-handed. Sarah was still standing next to me like my personal guardian. Well, I said finally, my voice cutting the silence like a razor, now that we no longer have an audience, do you want to explain to me exactly when you planned to tell me you were going to lock me up against my will? Mom, it was never against your will. Emily tried. Shut up. The force in my voice made her recoil. Do not insult me with more lies. I found the letters, Emily. Read your own words. Once she's committed, we can sell the house. Your own words. In your own handwriting. Emily started to cry, but she no longer inspired any compassion in me. I had cried too many times for a daughter who turned out to be a stranger. Do you know what hurts the most? I continued. It's not that you want to rob me. It's not that you want to lock me away. What hurts the most is that you have destroyed 30 years of love in just a few months of greed. It wasn't like that, David muttered. It wasn't like that. I looked at him with contempt. David, when you came to this house 15 years ago, you had nothing. No job, no money, no place to live. I took you in, I fed you, I cared for you when you were sick, I cared for your daughter so you could work, and this is how you repay me. Helen, things got complicated. Things got greedy, I corrected him. You saw a single old woman with a paid-off house and a $1,200 monthly pension, and you decided it was easier to rob me than to keep pretending you loved me. Sarah gripped my hand tighter. Grandma, I didn't know. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this horrible. My love, you are not to blame for any of this. You are the only light left in this dark family. So what happens now? Sarah asked. I smiled for the first time all day with genuine satisfaction. Now my princess is when your grandmother shows you that she is not the helpless old woman they thought she was. I headed toward the stairs with firm, determined steps. Sarah, come with me. Emily and David, you stay exactly where you are. My voice had an authority I hadn't used in years, but it now flowed from me like spring water. Where are you going, Mom? Emily asked, her voice trembling. "To get a few things you'll need to understand the magnitude of what you've done." I climbed the stairs, followed by Sarah, leaving the conspirators in the living room, probably wondering what else I knew about their plans. In my room, I opened my closet and took out the shoebox where I kept my most important documents. Sarah watched me with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "Grandma, how did you find out about everything?" "Your Aunt Beth called me the night of your graduation. She had found the documents that you brought her." I looked at her tenderly. My brave granddaughter who had the courage to expose her own parents' betrayal. Sarah blushed. "I couldn't stay quiet. When I saw those papers in their room, when I read what they planned to do to you, I felt so sick, so angry. I couldn't believe they were capable of something like that." "How long did you know?" 2 weeks. I found them by chance when Mom asked me to look for some insurance documents in her room. At first I didn't understand what they were, but then..." Her voice broke. "Then I read everything and realized they were going to destroy your life." I hugged my granddaughter tightly. "My love, you saved me. Without you, I would be on my way to the St. Raphael home right now, and they would be downstairs celebrating their victory." I took all my legal documents out of the box. The deeds to the house, my will, my pension statements, my bank deposit certificates. I also had the photographs I had taken of the fake documents, which I had printed at the local library 2 days earlier. "Sarah, I want you to see something." I showed her my savings passbook. "I have $3,000 that they don't know exist, money I've been saving in secret for the last 2 years. What for? Originally to take you on a trip when you graduated. I wanted you to see Europe, the land of our ancestors." I smiled sadly. Now that money is going to be used for something much more important, for our freedom. We went down to the living room together, where Emily and David were still standing, looking like criminals awaiting sentencing. I spread all the documents on the coffee table, creating a mosaic of evidence that made them turn even paler. "Here are the deeds to this house," I announced, placing the most important document in the center. "Purchased in 1998 with my money in my name completely paid off. Here are the receipts for all the payments I made during 15 years working as a secretary." Emily and David didn't dare come closer. "Here is my will." I continued, pulling out another document, written 5 years ago, when I still believed I had a daughter who loved me. In it, everything is left to Emily and Sarah in equal parts. "Mom," Emily murmured. Silence. My voice cut through her words like a whip. "Here are my bank statements showing that I manage my finances perfectly. Here are the receipts for all my utility payments, always on time, always correct. And here," I took out the photographs of their fake documents, "is the proof of your criminal conspiracy." David finally found his voice. "Helen, we can explain." "Explain what?" I looked at him with total contempt. "Explain how you forged a medical evaluation. Explain how you planned to steal my pension. Explain how you were going to sell my house while I was locked up against my will." I picked up the house phone and dialed a number I had memorized. "Beth." "Yes, it's me. Can you come over, please, and bring Robert with you?" Robert was Beth's husband, a retired lawyer who had always been like a brother to me. "Who did you call?" Emily asked, panic in her voice. "The only people I trust now." I hung up the phone and sat in my favorite armchair, the one that had belonged to my mother. "The people who are going to help me decide what to do with you." For the next 20 minutes, a tense silence filled the house. Emily paced back and forth like a caged animal. David had sat on the edge of the sofa, his head in his hands. Sarah remained by my side like my most faithful soldier. When Beth and Robert arrived, the atmosphere became even denser. Beth hugged me with tears in her eyes, while Robert examined the documents with a professional eye. "This is very serious," Robert muttered after reviewing everything. "We have falsification of medical documents, attempted forced commitment, conspiracy to commit financial fraud." He looked sternly at Emily and David. "You could face serious criminal charges." "That wasn't our intention," Emily burst out. "We just wanted what was best for Mom." "What was best for me?" I stood up from my armchair with royal dignity. Emily, tell me exactly which part of locking me up against my will in a dead-end nursing home while you took my money was best for me. The St. Raphael home has a good reputation. Lies, I interrupted. I looked up the reviews online. It's a horrible place where the elderly go to die forgotten. And you knew it perfectly well. Robert cleared his throat. Helen, legally, you have several options. You can press criminal charges, you can sue them civilly, you can change your will to disinherit them completely. Or, I interrupted him, I can do something smarter. I had been thinking about this for the last few days, and my plan was fully formed. What do you have in mind? Beth asked. I turned to Emily and David, who were watching me with barely concealed terror. You are going to sign a document acknowledging that you attempted to have me committed under false pretenses. You are going to return all original documents related to my pension and my properties. And you are going to move out of my house within 1 week. We can't do that, David yelled. We have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go. I laughed bitterly. And I had somewhere to go when you planned to lock me up in that asylum. Did you think about that when you designed your perfect little plan? Mom, please. Emily started to cry for real now. We're family. No. My voice turned cold as ice. A family doesn't betray. A family doesn't lie. A family doesn't conspire to destroy its most vulnerable members. I paused to let my words sink in deeply. You stopped being my family the day you decided my life was worth less than my money. And Sarah? David asked desperately. Are you going to separate her from her parents? I looked at my granddaughter, who had been listening to everything in silence. Sarah is 18. She's an adult. She can make her own decisions. I'm going with my grandma, Sarah declared without hesitation. I can't live with people who are capable of this. Sarah, we are your parents, Emily cried. You are the people who brought me into the world, Sarah corrected with a maturity that broke my heart. But real parents don't do what you did. Robert took notes on everything. Helen, do you want me to draft the necessary documents? Yes, I want everything in writing with notarized signatures. I looked at Emily and David one last time. You have 2 options. Sign those documents and move out peacefully or face criminal charges that could send you to jail. It's not fair, David muttered. It's not fair. My voice rose one last time. Do you know what's not fair? That after I gave you a home, food, love, and opportunities for 15 years, you plan to lock me up like an animal while you stole everything I have. I sat back down in my armchair, feeling stronger than I had in years. You have until next Friday to leave, and if you ever come near me or Sarah with malicious intent again, you will have to answer to the law. The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in months, I was the one in control. The following days were like living in a house divided by a silent war. Emily and David moved like ghosts, avoiding my gaze, whispering in conversations that cut off abruptly when I appeared. Sarah, on the other hand, had become my protective shadow, making sure I was never alone with them. On Tuesday morning, Robert arrived with the legal documents we had discussed. He spread them on the dining room table like a general unfurling battle maps. Here is everything we need, he explained. The admission of guilt, the waiver of any claim to your assets, and the voluntary move-out agreement. Emily and David approached the table like convicts walking to the gallows. Their faces had aged years in just a few days, but I felt no compassion. Compassion was a luxury I could no longer afford for people who had planned my destruction. We can't sign this, David muttered after reading the documents. We're basically confessing to a crime. Because you did commit a crime, I replied in a calm voice. And now you have to decide if you prefer to confess it in private or explain it to a judge in public. Mom, please, Emily pleaded. We're family. We can solve this another way. I stood up slowly and walked to the window overlooking the garden where I had planted roses 20 years ago. Those roses had bloomed every spring, survived droughts and harsh winters, and been reborn time and time again. Like me, I thought. Emily, I said without turning around. Do you know the exact moment you stopped being my daughter? Her silence confirmed she was listening. It wasn't when I found the asylum papers. It wasn't when you forged the medical evaluation. It wasn't even when you planned to sell my house, I turned to look at her directly. "It was when you decided that my life was worth less than your financial comfort." "I never thought that." "Of course you thought that." My voice cut through her lies. "Because if you had thought of me as a human being with rights and dignity, you never could have planned what you planned." Sarah came over and took my hand. "Grandma, don't get upset. They're not worth it." She was right. I calmed down and returned to the table where Robert was waiting patiently. "You have until 5 o'clock this afternoon to sign," I announced. "After that, Robert will proceed with the criminal charges." "And if we sign?" David asked in a defeated voice. "If you sign, you leave my house on Friday as agreed, and you never interfere in my life again. It's simple." Beth, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Emily, you were my favorite niece when you were little. I held you in my arms when you were born. I took care of you when your mother worked. How could you become this?" Emily began to cry, but these were no longer tears that moved me. They were tears of self-pity, not genuine remorse. "Aunt Beth, things just got so complicated. The expenses, Sarah's college, David's problems at work. And so you decided to steal from an old woman." Beth did not hide her disgust. "So you plan to lock up my sister as if she were an animal." "It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that," I intervened. "Emily, tell me exactly how it was then. Explain what part of your plan didn't include stealing my money, selling my house, and locking me up against my will." She had no answer because there was no other way to interpret what they had done. At 3 in the afternoon, I made a decision I had been considering for days. "Sarah, come with me. We're going to take a trip." "Where, Grandma?" "To the bank. I have some changes to make." We left the house, leaving Emily and David with the unsigned documents. The fresh air revitalized me. For the first time in months, I was leaving my house without asking permission, without anyone telling me if I could or couldn't do something. At the bank, I asked to speak with the manager. He was a young professional man who listened attentively as I explained my situation. "I want to change my will," I told him after telling him everything, "and I want to make sure that only I can make changes to my accounts." "Of course, Mrs. Helen. What changes would you like to make?" "I want my entire estate to go solely to my granddaughter, Sarah. My daughter is to be completely disinherited." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Grandma, you don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you, my love. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because I have the right to decide who deserves to inherit the fruits of my 40 years of work." The manager took notes and explained the legal process. "We will need a few days to prepare the documents, but I can assure you everything will be in order." When we returned home, we found Robert packing up his briefcase. Emily and David were sitting on the sofa, looking defeated. "Did they sign?" I asked. "Yes," Robert replied. "They signed everything. They admitted their guilt, waived any claim on your assets, and agreed to move out by Friday." A sense of relief and victory washed over me. For the first time in months, I breathed completely freely. "Good," I said simply. "Now you can start packing." That evening, as Emily and David carried boxes up and down the stairs, I sat in my living room with Sarah and Beth. The painting of red flowers was no longer hanging. I had thrown it in the trash that afternoon. In its place, I had hung a photograph of Sarah and me on her graduation day. "Do you regret anything, sister?" Beth asked me. I thought carefully before answering. "I regret being so naive. I regret trusting so much that I didn't see the signs. I regret allowing them to treat me as if I were invisible in my own home. But do you regret kicking them out?" "No." My answer was firm as steel. I don't regret defending my dignity. I don't regret protecting my assets, and I definitely don't regret showing them that I am not the helpless old woman they thought I was. Sarah snuggled up against me on the sofa. "Grandma, do you think they'll ever understand what they did? I don't know, my love. But it's no longer my responsibility to make them understand. My responsibility now is to live the rest of my life with dignity and peace." "And with me?" she asked with a smile. "With you, my princess. With you and with all the adventures that await us." That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply. There were no invisible locks in my own home. There were no whispered conversations planning my destruction. There was no fear that I would be taken against my will to a horrible place. There was silence, peace, and the promise of a future that I myself would build. On Thursday night, Emily came to my room. She knocked softly and entered when I gave her permission. She looked small, vulnerable, like the little girl she had once been. "Mom, can we talk? You can talk. I will listen." She sat on the edge of my bed, her hands trembling. I don't know how we got to this point. I don't know when everything went so wrong." "I do," I replied calmly. "It went wrong the day you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as an obstacle to your plans. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You hurt me in the deepest way possible." Emily began to cry. "Is there any way to fix this? Any way you can forgive me?" I looked at her for a long moment. I saw in her face traces of the girl I had raised, but I also saw the woman who had betrayed my trust in the cruelest way. "Emily, forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. And earning my forgiveness would require you to truly understand what you did to feel genuine remorse and to work for years to prove that you've changed. Do you think that's possible? Honestly, I don't know. But I know it's not going to happen while you're living in my house, depending on my money, pretending nothing happened." She was silent for several minutes. Finally, she stood up and walked to the door. "Mom, despite everything, I love you." "I loved you too, Emily, more than you will ever understand." I used the past tense deliberately, and we both understood. Friday dawned with a crystal clarity that seemed to reflect the transparency that had returned to my life. I woke up early, not from anxiety, as had been the custom in recent months, but from a renewed energy that ran through my veins like pure electricity. Today was the day my house would truly be mine again. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee just for Sarah and me. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't have to calculate portions for 4 people. The freedom of that simple decision filled me with unexpected satisfaction. Sarah appeared shortly after with a smile I hadn't seen in weeks. "Good morning, Grandma. How did you sleep?" "Like a baby, my love. And you?" "Better than in months. It's amazing how everything changes when you don't have to pretend you don't know they're planning to betray you." We sat down to breakfast while we listened to the noises from upstairs. Hurried footsteps, boxes dragging, tense voices coordinating the move. It was music to my ears. "Grandma, are you nervous about what comes next?" "Nervous?" I considered the question carefully. "No, my love, I'm excited. For the first time in years, my future is truly my own." At 10 in the morning, the moving truck arrived. From the kitchen window, I watched as Emily and David directed the movers. Their movements were mechanical, defeated. There was no conversation between them, just the cold efficiency of those fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. "Are you going to say goodbye to them?" Sarah asked me. "I already said goodbye, my love. I said goodbye to the daughter I thought I had the day I discovered who she really was." For the next 3 hours, I watched the furniture they had brought over the years parade out my door. The leather sofa David had bought when he got his job at the hospital. The dining table they had chosen without consulting my taste. The giant television that dominated the living room like a modern altar. With every object that left my house became more my own. The spaces opened up, light entered more freely, the air circulated with greater ease. It was as if the house itself was breathing a sigh of relief. Beth arrived at noon to keep us company during the final hours of the process. "How do you feel, sister?" "Like I'm being born again," I replied with absolute honesty. "Like I've been living in a prison and someone finally opened the doors." "I can't believe they really tried to do that to you." I couldn't believe it either at first, but the proof was there in black and white with their own signatures. At 2 in the afternoon, Emily came down with the last box in her hands. She looked exhausted, aged, as if these last few days had drained something essential from her being. She approached where I was sitting in my favorite armchair. "Mom, this is the last box." "Very well. Is that all you're going to say?" I looked at her directly. "What do you want me to say, Emily? that I hope you'll be happy, that I hope you learn from this, that maybe someday we can reconcile." "Yes, I was hoping for something like that." "Well, I can't give you that. I can't pretend this is just a family misunderstanding. I can't pretend that in a few months everything will be back to normal." I stood up and walked to the window. "What you planned to do to me was destroy my life to benefit yours. That isn't forgotten, Emily. That isn't forgiven easily." "But is it never forgiven?" She turned to look at me one last time. "Forgiveness is earned, not begged for. And earning my forgiveness would require you to fundamentally change as a person. I don't know if you're capable of that." David appeared at the living room door. "Helen, everything is ready. We wanted to thank you for the years we lived here." "Thank me?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "David, you have nothing to thank me for. I have 15 years of my life that I can't get back. Years when I opened my home and my heart to people who turned out to be strangers." "We're not strangers," Emily murmured. "We're family." "No." My voice became firm as rock. "Family doesn't betray. Family doesn't conspire. Family doesn't plan the destruction of its most vulnerable members for personal gain." Sarah stood up from the sofa and placed herself by my side. "You stopped being family the day you decided Grandma was disposable." "Sarah, please," Emily began. "No." My granddaughter's voice was as firm as mine. "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I'm not going to pretend you are victims. You planned to lock my grandmother in an asylum while you stole all her money. That is unforgivable." "She's your mother," David said desperately. "And she is my grandmother," Sarah replied. "The woman who raised me when you were working. The woman who comforted me when I had nightmares. The woman who taught me that family is based on love and respect, not financial convenience." The silence that followed was absolute. Outside, the moving truck waited with the engine running. "Well," Emily said finally, "I guess this is goodbye." "You guess right." She moved as if to hug me, but I stepped back. "No, Emily, I'm not going to pretend this is a normal goodbye. I'm not going to act like you're going on a trip and we'll be back soon." "Mom, I hope you find a way to live with what you did. I hope you someday truly understand the magnitude of your betrayal. And I hope that if you're lucky, you find a way to become a better person." Emily started to cry, but I didn't move to comfort her. Those days were over forever. "And what if someday we want to come visit you, when you are different people, when you have proven that you have truly changed? Maybe we can talk. But that would take years, Emily. Years of proving you understand what you did." David took Emily's arm. "Let's go. It's time." I watched them walk to the door. Emily turned one last time. "Mom, I hope someday you can forgive us. I hope someday you deserve to be forgiven." The door closed behind them with a definitive sound. We heard the truck pull away, the sound of the engine fading until it became complete silence. "How do you feel, Grandma?" I walked through my living room now, spacious and full of light. The sun's rays streamed freely through the windows, illuminating every corner without obstruction. The air felt purer, fresher. "I feel free, Sarah. For the first time in years, completely free. And sad. Sad for the daughter I lost a long time ago, long before they left today. But not sad for the decision I made. That decision saved my life." That afternoon, Beth helped us rearrange the furniture. Without Emily and David's things, the house looked completely different, cozier, more personal, more ours. "You know what we're going to do now?" I asked Sarah as we placed fresh flowers on the dining table. "What, Grandma?" "We are going to live my love. We are going to live exactly as we want to live." That night, I made Sarah's favorite dinner chicken with rice and vegetables. We ate at the dining room table with candles lit and soft music playing in the background. It was our first dinner as a real family, without masks, without lies, without hidden fears. "Grandma, did you ever think it would come to this? To what, my love? To having to choose between your dignity and your family?" I thought carefully about her question. Sarah, real family never puts you in that position. Real family never forces you to choose between your well-being and theirs. Then, what were they? They were people who took advantage of my love and my trust. People who saw my generosity as weakness and my house as an opportunity. But they were family for a long time. Yes, for a long time they pretended to be family, but when the moment of truth came, when they had to choose between my well-being and their convenience, they chose their convenience. And how do you know I won't change too? I took my granddaughter's hands in mine, because you had the chance to stay quiet when you discovered their plans. You could have chosen the comfort of pretending you didn't know, but you chose to defend what was right, even though it was painful. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you my real family, my love, my only real family. 3 months after Emily and David left my life had blossomed in ways I never imagined possible at 68. I woke up that October morning with the same ritual I had adopted since the first day of my freedom. Coffee in my favorite cup, looking out the window at the garden I now tended with renewed love, feeling the deep satisfaction of making my own decisions. Sarah had started her medical studies at the State University, but lived with me on the weekends. The house had found a perfect balance between the quiet solitude I needed to heal and the loving company that fed my soul. "Good morning, Grandma." Sarah appeared in the kitchen with a radiant smile carrying anatomy books. "Ready for our special day?" Today was the day we had been planning for weeks. We were going to use part of my savings to take the trip to Europe I had always dreamed of. But more important than the destination was what it represented: the freedom to spend my money on what brought me happiness without having to justify it to anyone. "More than ready, my love. Do you have everything packed? All set, and you? Are you nervous about flying after so many years?" "Nervous." I laughed with genuine joy. My princess, after surviving a family conspiracy, a plane seems like the safest thing in the world. As we ate breakfast, I reflected on the changes that had transformed not only my house, but my entire spirit. I had started taking painting classes at the community center. My art was simple, but every brushstroke represented an emotion I had kept suppressed for years. I had also joined a book club where women my age shared stories and supported each other. "Grandma, do you ever regret the decision you made?" "Never." I answered without hesitation. "Do you know what I discovered in these months? Sarah, I discovered that true family isn't the one that shares your blood, but the one that respects your dignity." The taxi arrived promptly at 10. As he loaded our bags, I looked at my house one last time before the trip. The flowers I had planted in the front yard were in full bloom. The new curtains I had chosen danced softly in the breeze. Everything was exactly as I wanted it to be. At the airport, while we waited for our flight, Sarah surprised me with a confession that broke and healed my heart at the same time. "Grandma, there's something I never told you about the day I found the documents." "What is it, my love?" When I first saw them, my first impulse was to pretend I hadn't seen anything. It was just easier, you know. I didn't want to face that my parents were capable of something like that. "But you didn't." "No, because I remembered something you told me when I was a little girl. You told me that the difference between a good person and a bad person isn't that the good person is never tempted to do the wrong thing. It's that when the time comes to decide, they always choose what's right." Her words filled me with such deep pride that I felt tears forming in my eyes. "My love, that day, you proved you are exactly the person I always knew you were." And you know what else I told myself that day? "What?" I said, "If my grandma can be strong for 68 years, I can be strong for 18. The flight to Chicago was my first international experience, but I didn't feel like an old woman lost in a new world. I felt like a free woman, exploring possibilities that had always been there, just waiting for me to have the courage to reach for them. During the flight, I wrote in a journal I had started the day Emily and David left. It was my way of processing everything I had been through, but also of chronicling my rebirth. "Today, I am flying to Chicago with my granddaughter," I wrote. "But more important than the physical destination is the emotional destination I have reached. I have learned that it is never too late to defend your dignity. I have learned that true love never requires you to sacrifice your well-being. I have learned that real family is the one that protects you, not the one that exploits you. Chicago welcomed us with a vibrant energy that instantly rejuvenated me. We walked the cobblestone streets, visited museums, ate in small restaurants, where the waiters treated me with the respect I had forgotten I deserved. One afternoon, while we were sitting in a cafe, my phone rang. The number was familiar but distant. It was Emily. I looked at the screen for several seconds before deciding to answer. Yes. Mom, it's me. Her voice sounded different, humbler, broken. How are you? I'm doing very well, Emily. How did you get this number? Beth told me you had changed your phone. Mom, I need to talk to you. We are talking. No, I mean really talk. About what happened. About what we did. I looked at Sarah, who had been listening. She nodded, giving me her silent support to handle the conversation, as I saw fit. Emily, I'm in Chicago, with Sarah, spending my money on what makes me happy. A long silence followed my words. Chicago, Mom, you always wanted to go there. Yes, I always wanted to go, and now I can because I have control over my own life and my own money. Mom, David and I have been in therapy, trying to understand how we came to do something so horrible. I'm glad to hear that, Emily. I'm glad you are seeking help to become better people. But that doesn't change what you did, nor does it mean I have to forgive you immediately. I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand what we did was wrong, very wrong. Do you really understand, Emily? Or do you just understand that there were consequences you didn't expect? Another long pause. I think I'm starting to really understand. The therapist had us do exercises where we had to imagine how you felt when you discovered our plans. Mom, I can't sleep thinking about the terror you must have felt. For the first time in months, I heard something in Emily's voice that sounded like genuine remorse, not self-pity. Do you know what the most painful part was, Emily? What? It wasn't knowing you planned to lock me up. It wasn't knowing you wanted to steal my money. The most painful part was realizing you had stopped seeing me as a human being with rights and feelings. Mom, I never... Yes, Emily. Yes, you did. Because if you had thought of me as a human being, you never could have planned what you planned. Is there any way to fix this? Any way we can rebuild our relationship? I looked at the bustling cafe around me at Sarah, reading a travel guide at the Chicago sun filtering through the windows. My new life built on my own decisions and my own strength. Emily, rebuilding requires time, real change, and consistent proof that you have changed. It's not words on a phone call. It's years of proving you understand what you did and that you have become different people. But is it possible? Everything is possible, but it has to be earned, not given. And in the meantime, I am going to keep living the life I deserve to live. I'm going to keep making my own decisions, spending my money on what makes me happy, and surrounding myself with people who truly value me. Like Sarah. Like Beth. Like the friends I've made in my painting class. Like everyone who shows me with actions, not words, that my well-being matters to them. When I hung up the phone, Sarah looked at me with curiosity. How do you feel after talking to her? Peaceful, I replied after a moment's thought. Peaceful because I know exactly who I am and what I'm worth. Peaceful because my happiness no longer depends on the approval or repentance of others. Do you think you'll ever be able to reconcile? I don't know, my love. But I know that if it happens, it will be because they have truly changed, not because I have lowered my standards. That night in our hotel in Chicago, I wrote in my journal the words that summarized my entire journey, both physical and emotional. Today, I understood that being reborn doesn't mean erasing the past. It means accepting that the past no longer defines your future. It means understanding that at 68 or at any age, you have the right to defend your dignity, to demand respect, and to live exactly as you choose to live. In the end, it's not the pension or the house that defines you. It's your ability to get up again and again to defend what is right, even when it's painful, and to never ever allow others to decide your worth. Because I deserve more than this. I deserve more than crumbs of affection in exchange for my assets. I deserve more than existing on the sidelines of my own life. And now finally I have exactly what I deserve. Freedom, dignity, and the company of those who truly love me. I closed the journal and looked out the hotel window. The lights of Chicago glittered like earthbound stars full of promise and possibility. At 68 years old, my real life had just begun.